Chevrah Lomdei Mishnah is the premier source for harnessing the benefits of Torah study and prayer as a source of comfort and merit for the souls of the departed. Our many services include the study of Mishnah and Talmud and the recital of Kaddish and Yizkar. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, a story is priceless. Now, Chevrah Lomdei Mishnah presents a series of inspirational stories recounted by the renowned storyteller Rabbi Meir Erbs, which illustrate the power of Torah study and Kaddish recital in accruing merits on behalf of our dear departed loved ones.
A number of years ago, there lived a young man in Israel who passed away, unfortunately, at a young age. He left over a young wife and a young child. And they turned to the child and they said, "Come, let us go to the shul, let us go to the synagogue to say the Kaddish prayer in the merit of your father's soul." But the child refused. He was too embarrassed. Try as they might, they couldn't convince him. Until they decided to take him to the Stipler Gaon. Rabbi Yaakov Yisrael Kanievsky, who was known and revered by all as the Stipler, after the Ukrainian town of his youth, Hornistipol. He was one of the greatest rabbis of his time. They brought the child to the Stipler, and the Stipler turned to the child, and he said to him, "Let me tell you a story. Have you ever heard of the great rabbi, Rabbi Akiva, the Tana, the great sage Rabbi Akiva?" To which the child replied, "Yes, I've heard of him." And he wanted to tell the following story. One day, Rabbi Akiva was walking, and he beheld a sight that he couldn't believe. In front of him was running an unclothed man who was as dark as coal. He was carrying on top of him a load of cut trees, heavy enough for 10 men to carry. And he stopped the man and he asked him, "What are you doing? Where are you going? If you are a slave, I will redeem you. If you're poor, I will give you money." And the man turned to Rabbi Akiva and said, Please do not keep me. Please do not hold me. If I come late, my masters will be terribly upset at me." And Rabbi Akiva asked him, but what are you doing? Where are you going?" And the man replied, and he said, "I am a dead man. Every day they send me from the next world to cut these trees, and I have to bring them back. They throw these trees into the fire, and then they throw me into the fire." Rabbi Akiva was taken aback, and he turned to the man and said, "Why? What did you do so wrong when you were alive in this world that you deserve such a terrible punishment?" To which the man replied, "When I was alive, I was a tax collector, a mean and evil tax collector. I favored the rich and I killed the poor. It is for this reason that it was decreed upon my soul to receive such a punishment." And Rabbi Akiva turned to this man and he said, "But is there a way for you to misaken your neshama, to rectify this terrible life that you lived so that your soul can rest in peace? Is there anything that you can do?" And the man turned to Rabbi Akiva and said, "No, there's nothing I could do. Except for if I would have had a son, a child, that could recite the Kaddish for me, that would be the only way that my soul can rest in peace. But when I died, I left over a wife who was pregnant, and I have no idea what ever became of her or the child for that matter." Rabbi Akiva turned to the man and he said, "Tell me, what is your name? What is your wife's name? From what town are you from? I will search and I will find your wife and I will see if you had a child. And I will teach your child if he does not know how to recite the Kaddish prayer. And I will teach him how to say the Kaddish and he will say it for the merit of your soul." And the man turned to Rabbi Akiva and he said, "My name was Akiva. My wife's name was Shushbina, and I came from the town of Lidkiah. That's all Rabbi Akiva needed to hear. Rabbi Akiva went and he found the town of Lidkiah. And he stopped the first person he saw and he asked him, "Do you know of a man by the name of Akiva who was a tax collector? His wife's name was Shushbina?" To which the man replied, "Of course I know who that was. Akiva the tax collector? May his bones rot in his grave. His wife, may her name be obliterated from this world." And yes, he did have a child. He had a son, an uncircumcised son. He never got a bris milah. Akiva heard the information and he found the child. And he turned to the child and he told him of his experience meeting his father. And he told the child, "I will circumcise you, I will give you a bris milah. And I will teach you how to read the Aleph Beis and how to say the Kaddish prayer." And sure enough, Rabbi Akiva circumcised the young boy. He fasted for 40 days, and then a bas kol, a heavenly voice, said to Rabbi Akiva, "Okay, now go and teach." And he sat down with the young child and he taught him the Aleph Beis, and he taught him how to say the Kaddish. A little while after that, the man appeared to Rabbi Akiva in a dream, and he said to Rabbi Akiva, "May it be the will of Hashem that you shall have a great reward in the next world, for you saved me from the afflictions of Gehenna." And with that, the stipler going turned to the young child, and he said to the child, "Do you see the power of a Kaddish? Do you see what it can do for the soul of someone who passed away? Do you know how much your father wants you to say the Kaddish? It would be the greatest thing that you can do for him." And with that, the child left and indeed went on to say the Kaddish for the entire year that it was necessary for him to say Kaddish for his father. There lived in Pressburg a very wealthy couple who supported many worthy charitable causes, amongst them the local Pressburg yeshiva. But perhaps that which stood out the most was a fund that they set up to pay people to say Kaddish for those who do not have someone to say Kaddish for them, for whatever reason. As time went on, eventually the husband passed away. And with that, the business started going downhill until it got to a point where the woman was left pretty much penniless. And if that wasn't enough, she had 2 daughters who were of marriageable age and without a penny to make their weddings. And one day, she went into the Ksav Sofer, who was the Rosh Yeshiva. He was the dean of the Pressburg Yeshiva. And she poured out her heart to him. And she said, "I'm penniless. I don't have with what to marry off my daughters with. But for that, I'm sure Hashem will take care of me. What pains me even more is that I can't afford to pay those who would say the Kaddish for the souls who departed, who don't have anyone to say Kaddish for them." And she turned to the Rosh Yeshiva and she asked him, "Can you please take it upon yourself to raise those funds and to pay those to say the Kaddish for those who do not have to say the Kaddish for them?" The Rosh Yeshiva was very touched by the woman and by what she wanted, and he agreed. The woman walked out of the Rosh Yeshiva's office, and as she was walking down the block, she saw coming towards her a very dignified, elderly gentleman who she had no idea who he was. She had never met him before. And he approached her, and he started asking her, "How are you? How are you doing? How are you doing financially? I heard that things are pretty bad. And she turned to him and said, yes, that's right. I don't have a penny to my name, and I can't afford to marry off my 2 daughters. And the man turned to the woman and he asked her, tell me, how much money do you need to make the weddings for your daughters? Taken by surprise, the woman thought to herself, and she gave him an amount. The man took out his checkbook and he wrote out the exact amount that the woman needed. And he said, I will sign this check and I will give it to you. You are to take it and go to the local bank and cash this check. But before I sign it, come with me to the local yeshiva. Come with me to the Pressburg yeshiva, where we will call out 2 of the Bachrim, 2 of the young men who are learning there, to be witnesses to my signing this check, just in case you will need it in the bank. And with that, they went off to the yeshiva, and indeed they called out 2 Bachrim, one of which at the time was simply called Chaim, but was later to become Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, the Rav of Yerushalayim, the Rav of Jerusalem. And that is how we know this story to be true today. He signed the check in front of them, and in addition, he wrote his signature on a separate piece of paper just in case they would need it to match it up later on. And with that, they walked out of the yeshiva. The elderly gentleman went on his way, and she went to the bank, thinking to herself, was this a miracle or just a cruel hoax? And she walked into the bank and she handed over the check to the teller. The teller looked at the check and he said to her, just a moment. For this, I need to bring out the owner of the bank. And the owner of the bank came out and the teller showed him the check. The owner of the bank picked up the check, he looked at it and fainted on the spot. Immediately they brought the owner of the bank some water, they poured it on his face, and he came to. He stood up shaking, and he turned to the woman and he said, I must speak to you. Can you please come to my office? And the woman sat down in his office, and he turned to the woman and he said, can you tell me, where did you get this check from? To which the woman replied, I'll tell you the truth. I was walking down the street just a few moments ago, and this elderly gentleman came over to me. I don't recall ever seeing him before. And he asked me how I'm doing, and he knew that I had to marry off my 2 daughters. And he wrote out this check so that I can be able to marry off my 2 daughters. Can you describe to me what this man looked like? And the woman went on to try to the best of her ability to describe him. He had a white beard. He looked very dignified. The banker then pulled out from his desk drawer a photograph, and he showed it to the woman. Did he look like this by any chance? Yes, said the woman. That's exactly how he looked. And with that, the banker turned to the woman and he said, that man was my father. My father passed away 10 years ago. Last night, my father came to me in a dream and he told me, son, when I passed away, at first you said the Kaddish for the merit of my soul. But soon after that, you chose to go off the path of the Torah. You stopped saying Kaddish and you married a Gentile woman. After that, my soul knew no rest. That was until a very pious woman paid someone to say the Kaddish prayer for the merit of my soul. Tomorrow, This woman is going to come to you in your bank and present a check signed by myself. Make sure you give her the money for that check. And I woke up in a cold sweat, not knowing if that was a nightmare or mere nonsense. My wife looked at me and she said, "What's the matter? Is everything okay? You looked like you saw a ghost." And I related to the dream I just had. And she said to me, dreams are but nonsense. Just forget about it. And I tried convincing myself that she was right, and indeed the dream was just nonsense. That was until you walked in here today and presented that check to me. And with that, the man handed over the money to the woman. And shortly after that, the man did a sincere tshuva, a sincere repentance. His wife became a sincere convert, and they went on to raise a fine religious family. Anna Prisand lived in Atlanta, Georgia. Unfortunately, she had a sister who was very ill. And she made sure to stand by her sister's bedside, waiting on her for anything that she could possibly do for her sister. And she did this until the day her sister passed away. When her sister passed away, she recalled that even after someone leaves this world, it is still possible to do something in the merit of the soul who departed. She remembered that one can study Mishnayos, and the merit of that Torah study can elevate the soul of the one who passed away. She picked up the phone and she called the principal of the local day school, and she said to him, "Rabbi, I need to meet with you. I need to speak with you. Can I come over now?" The rabbi replied, "Sure, come over." Anna stood in front of the principal and she told him that unfortunately her sister had passed away. "Can you ask someone to learn Mishnayos, study Mishnayos for the merit of my sister's departed soul?" To which the principal replied, "Sure. I'm sure one of the teachers in the school can do it for you." He took down the name of Anna's sister and said, "I'll take care of it." And sure enough, he approached one of the teachers in the school and he was able to do it. A little while later, perhaps a few months, Anna appeared once again, standing in front of the principal's desk. And she turned to the principal and she asked him, "Rabbi, how come those Mishnayos aren't being studied anymore? Can you please look into it?" And the principal turned to her and he says, "Yes, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of it. I'll speak to the teacher who undertook to study the Mishnayos for the merit of your sister's soul." She left, and he approached the rabbi, the teacher of the school, and he asked her, "Are you still studying those Mishnayos? Remember a few months ago I gave you the name, someone whose sister came in and requested that you do the Mishnayos for her?" And the rabbi turned to the principal and he said, "The truth of the matter is that just recently I haven't had any time to do it. I apologize." So the principal approached someone else who was able to study the Mishnayos instead. A little while later, the principal met Anna and he asked her, "Anna, how did you know that the teacher had stopped saying and studying the Mishnayos for the merit of your sister?" And Anna told the principal, "One evening, my sister appeared to me in a dream. And she wore a very grim expression on her face. And she turned to me and she said, 'Anna, how come the Mishnayos, the study of the Mishnayos has been stopped? I am depending on those Mishnayos. please do something about it. It was then that I came to you and I told you the Mishnayos must have been stopped. They were no longer being studied. But a little while later, my sister appeared to me once again in a dream. And she told me, this time with a radiant expression on her face, "You have no idea what a comfort it is for me that these Mishnayos are being studied now for my soul." The Mordechai Gifter, the late Telzer Rosh Hashiva, was once going with a group of his students, 8 of his students to be exact, on the way to a student's wedding. The chassan, the groom, had arranged a flight for his rabbi and his friends, and before they knew it, they were on the plane heading towards their friends, their students' wedding. Thankfully, the flight was uneventful. That was until they were getting closer to the destination, and the pilot announced that unfortunately, due to severe storms, they would not be able to land at their destination, but instead would have to take a detour and land somewhere else totally. Didn't take long for the rabbi and the students to realize that they would not be making the wedding. The plane landed, and they got off the plane, and they looked at their watches, and they realized that they had not yet daven mincha. They did not yet pray the afternoon service, and that it was soon to get dark. They approached one of the supervisors in the airport, and they asked him, perhaps there was a small room on the side where they can go and pray. To which he replied, "Sure, follow me." And sure enough, the supervisors showed them into a small room where unfortunately they did not have a minyan, they did not have a quorum of 10 men to pray with, but the 9 of them prayed by themselves. And instead of the supervisor leaving and going on with his work, for some reason, he stood by the door and he watched as the rabbi and his students prayed. After they finished, the supervisor turned to the rabbi and his students, and he asked them, "Why didn't you say Kaddish?" Students and the rabbi were shocked. This fellow didn't look like he was a Jew. And they started explaining to him that in order to say Kaddish, you need 10 people, you need a minyan, you need a quorum of 10 men in order to say the Kaddish. And the supervisor turned to them and said, "Nu, bin ich nicht a Yid? Am I not a Jew?" And before the students could even say anything, he went on to tell them. He said, "Rabbi, students, do you think that your landing here today was mere coincidence?" And he went on to say the following. "Last night, my father appeared to me in a dream, and he said, 'Son, tomorrow is my yahrzeit. Please go say Kaddish for the merit of my soul.'" And I answered back to my father, says, "Dad, listen, you know I loved you, but you also know I'm not religious. When's the last time I prayed? And besides, even if I wanted to, I work a whole day in the airport. There's no shul, there's no synagogue around the airport. How in the world am I going to say the Kaddish prayer for you?" To which he replied, "I will send you a minyan. I will send you enough people." I woke up the next morning thinking that it was just merely a dream, not thinking much of it. That was until 9 of you approached me today and asked me, "Can we please have a place to pray?" And I saw that there were 9 of you, and including me, indeed, there would be a minyan. And with that, the man went on to say the Kaddish for the merit of his father's soul. Mr. Jeff Burrell of Highland Park, New Jersey. His father passed away in January 1994. At the time, Jeff was not religious, and his small understanding of what the Kaddish was about was very limited. He thought it was a nice thing to do, but really didn't understand the true significance of what it was. And sometimes he was able to say it, sometimes not. It all depended on his schedule. And when it really inconvenienced him, he didn't say it at all. Until it got to a point as the years went by that he wouldn't even say the Kaddish at all without any effort given thinking about it on any of his father's yard sites. That was until the winter of 2005. Jeff woke up for an unexplainable reason at 4:30 a.m., figuring, okay, it happens. He'll go back to sleep until it was time to wake up. He tossed and turned and just couldn't fall back to sleep. And he said to himself, okay, today I have no excuse. I'll go pray. I'll go daven Shacharis. I'll go pray the morning service. And he went to his local shul, the local synagogue, and he noticed that in the back they were setting up a table of fruit. And upon further inspection, he noticed some very interesting looking fruit. And he turned to the people who were setting up and he asked them, why are you setting up this table here? And they turned to him and he said, well, today is Tu B'Shvat, the 15th day of the month of Shvat in the Hebrew calendar, and traditionally we know it to be the new year for the trees. So just after the prayers, we're going to have a little celebration in honor of that. And Jeff stopped for a second and started thinking, Tu B'Shvat, 15th day of Shvat. It sounded so familiar to him. And then it hit him. That was the day of his father's yard site. And immediately realized that his waking up that morning was no mere coincidence. And from that day on, he committed to himself that he would make sure to say the Kaddish from every year thereon on his father's yard site. An elderly woman lived in Israel, passed away. She left over a family of children who were not observant. That was all except for one daughter. The non-observant children did not say Kaddish for their deceased mother. And for whatever reason, the daughter who was religious did not arrange for anyone else to say the Kaddish for her. A year after the mother's passing, she appeared to her daughter in a dream, and she said to her, how come you haven't arranged for a Kaddish to be said in the merit of my soul? They give me no peace here because of that. The woman woke up and she immediately paid someone to say Kaddish for the merit of her mother's soul. A month later, the mother reappeared to her daughter and she said to her, thank you. You have given peace to my soul. A great sage once related that he was called into the bedside of someone who was breathing his last breaths. And the man turned to the rabbi and he said, Rabbi, please, I'm going to die soon. When I die, could you please accept upon yourself to study one parak, one chapter of Mishnayos a day? To which the rabbi replied, sure, I will do that for you. The rabbi left, and soon after the man passed away. And the rabbi began every day to study one chapter of Mishnayos in the merit of this man's soul. And one day, for whatever reason, the rabbi's schedule was busier than ever. He forgot to study that chapter that day. And it was getting dark. The day was almost over. And the man who had passed away appeared to the rabbi and said to him, "Rabbi, the day is almost over, and you have not yet studied. You did not learn that parak, that chapter of Mishnah for my soul. Please, Rabbi, can you do it?" And of course, the rabbi stopped everything he was doing and sat down and studied that chapter of Mishnah. Ruvain was a fundraiser for a kollel in Williamsburg. It was his responsibility to make sure that the students who studied Torah day and night in the kollel received their monthly stipend on time. Of course, he was constantly trying to think of new and innovative ways to raise the funds necessary to support the students. One day, Ruvain went into the store of a friend of his, and that day was the 9th of Shvat, Tes Shvat. And he was discussing with his friend, the owner of the store, a new way to raise funds for the kollel. The idea was that he would offer anyone who wanted to support the kollel for one day. And the schus, the merit of that Torah study, would go towards whatever they wanted. It could be for the merit of a loved one, it could be in honor of someone, or just simply for success in business. And as he was discussing this idea with his friend, the store owner, in the store was an unaffiliated Russian Jew. And he approached Ruvain and he said, "I just heard what you were just talking about," to the store owner. He took out from his pocket $50 and handed it to Ruvain. And he said, "Can you please make sure that the students study Torah in the merit of my late mother, Sima Bas Chaim?" Of course, Ruvain was happy to hear that this man wanted to do such a noble act for the soul of his mother. And he turned to him and he said, "What is the date of your mother's yahrzeit?" To which he replied, "January 27th. Do you know perhaps the Hebrew date?" He turned to the rabbi and he said, "Listen, I don't know what the Hebrew date was. She passed away January 27th, 1980. What's the difference? The Hebrew date, she passed away on January 27th. Please have the students study in the merit of my mother's soul on January 27th. Ruvain tried explaining to the fellow the significance of the yahrzeit being on the Hebrew date rather than the English date. And then Ruvain came up with an idea. He quickly called a friend of his who he knew had a calendar that spanned maybe 100 years or so. And he asked him to look up what was the Hebrew date on January 27th, 1980. And his friend replied, Tes Shvat, the 9th day of Shvat. And he turned to the man and he said, "Today is the yahrzeit of your mother." And immediately he called up the kollel and asked them to learn and to study in the merit of Sima Bas Chaim.
With Chevrah Lomdei Mishnah, everybody gains. The family member gains. The deceased gains. The Torah scholar gains. Everybody gains.
To benefit the soul of your loved one with one of Chevrah Lomdei Mishnah's many programs, call 732-364-7029 or visit our website at chevralomdeimishnah.org.